Hello and welcome to Planet Zoo Console Edition. It's been a very long wait for all of you console players, but wait no more, Planet Zoo for console is finally here. Frontier has kindly provided me with an early access look at the console version, and as a seasoned Planet Zoo player, I've clocked up about 4,500 hours in the game since the beta launch way back in 2019. I figured creating a quick start guide is a good idea to help out all of you new players joining the Planet Zoo community. I still recall when I first delved into Planet Zoo, there is an awful lot to learn, and it can seem a bit daunting at first with so much information to remember. So I'm making this tutorial as a quick start guide of everything I wish I'd known when I first started out. In this video, I'm explaining everything about the user interface and how to use this to play the game, starting with the main screen. On the left hand side is all of the game modes, starting with career. You'll notice here it says first steps. That's because this is where all the game tutorials are. The first 3 career scenarios are geared towards helping you learn how to play the game. Personally, I've never had the patience to run through the tutorial scenarios. I think I made it halfway through the first one before giving up and venturing out on my own, and that was probably a bad idea as I spent a lot of time trying to figure stuff out myself when I'd probably have spent less time learning the game if I'd simply completed all the tutorials. So skip them at your own risk, really. That said, if you're like me and you just don't have the patience to learn properly, this guide should help you master the basics. Next on the main screen we've got franchise mode. Now franchise mode is basically a challenge mode where you create your own franchise zoos, but it has a community spin on it. Like a typical challenge mode for a simulation game of this nature, in franchise you have to carefully manage the economy, welfare and happiness, but there's a community element where you can trade animals in franchise with other players. I think it's a great game mode, and after Sandbox, I'd say franchise is probably what I've personally spent most of my time in. Next is the time scenarios. This is a more focused challenge mode where you'll be given specific objectives to achieve within a certain time limit. So that's similar to career mode but with the added time pressure. Next is the basic challenge mode. This will provide a blank slate zoo, so you are starting from scratch, but all of the economy, animal welfare, guest and staff happiness management is still active. Then we're on to sandbox mode, and like challenge mode, you will start with a blank slate zoo, but for sandbox, you can modify the management options, turning things on and off like economy, animal welfare and happiness to suit your playstyle. The last option here on this side of the screen is My Zoos, and basically this is just where you'll find all of the zoos that you've created and saved. So that's the game modes. Now on the right side of the screen we've got 2 more options here. First is the community challenges. There's nothing here right now, likely because I'm recording this in the early access time frame, but every couple of weeks or so a new community challenge will be displayed here. For community challenges, this is where you work with other players in franchise mode to achieve specific objectives. So that'll be things like breeding specific animals, say maybe endangered animals, or breed gold rated animals. The game will record your progress towards this and also the overall progress of the community to completing the challenge. And if it's completed within the time limit set, you'll get a reward such as a high rated animal for achieving the objective. Everyone has an opinion of the community challenges. Some are great, some are really difficult to achieve, but you can pick and choose which community challenges you go for. You don't have to do them all, and if you do participate in one, then it's a fun way to engage with the Planet Zoo community as a whole. Anyway, last but not least on the main page options, we've got the Frontier Workshop. Now, if you're familiar with it, this works exactly how the Steam Workshop works on the PC version. This is basically a platform where you can share, browse and download user-generated content that you can use in-game. For example, if you created an animal habitat that you were particularly happy with, you could save that and share it on the Frontier Workshop here. I think this is a fantastic resource. It's one of the main reasons I play the game, to be honest. Not only for sharing your own stuff, but you can pick up things that other people have done and use that for inspiration, or just use it in your zoos to save the time doing it yourself. It's currently empty at the moment, and I'm assuming that's because I'm in the early access version of the game, but I'm pretty confident it won't stay empty for long once the game fully launches. So that's everything to do with the main page and the game modes and the different challenges and things that you'll get through the game. Now I'm going to open a zoo and run through the essentials to get you up and running. Time to learn some of the controls. Now it's worth bearing in mind here, this is the console version, PS5 to be precise, but I have connected a keyboard and mouse to play the game, and that's purely because after playing Planet Zoo on PC for 4+ years, I thought jumping straight in on a controller would be a little too much of a learning curve even for me. So I picked up a cheap wireless keyboard specially for this occasion. That said, I did do a little test with the controller configuration and it works pretty well too. I would say if you're solely using controller and struggling with that, I had no problem connecting a generic keyboard and mouse to the PS5, so I'd recommend that option if the controller isn't working for you. With that, I'd say it's time to look at the biggest pain point of learning the game, and that is the user interface. So please bear with me on this one. I will try to run through it as quickly and seamlessly as possible. The user interface, this is all the little icons that are running on the top, side and bottom of the screen here, and each of these icons does play an important role in planning, managing and playing the game. Starting at the side is the timeline. This will show notifications when anything happens in the game and important actions you might need to take. Next is challenges, and this is a list of a couple of challenges that will always be active. Working towards these challenges will earn you rewards such as credits and cash. There's also a tab for community challenges, but this will only be active in franchise mode. Next is the little eye icon, and this is for inspector visits. This is a key part of the gameplay where an inspector will visit your zoo and they will be looking at stuff like the animal welfare, litter, and you'll either pass the inspection or you might get fined if there's something wrong in the zoo. The red icon below this is for high priority alerts. So at the moment, this is warning me that I don't have some essential buildings that I'll need to run the zoo. Definitely worth keeping an eye on this tab, just in case there's anything that's threatening the success of your zoo. Okay, let's move on to the bottom icons, which are to do with actions rather than notifications. Starting off with the zoo one. This is basically your control center to keep tabs on zoo management. So a lot of information stored here about how well your zoo is performing, and the charts here can help you understand where you're doing well and what might need improvement. An important one here is zoo reputation. There's 5 categories for this, and as you improve the zoo, you'll earn stars from no stars to 5 stars, and that'll be a separate rating for things like the quality and variety of animals in the zoo, conservation for the conservation efforts. Guest education is about creating a learning environment, so how well you're teaching guests about the animals. Then there's marketing, where you can set campaigns to promote the zoo in the outside world. And finally, guest happiness, so have you got the right facilities and are the guests happy with them? Below this, a very important stat, it's your cash flow and this year's profit. Negative numbers here will be a first indication that something's gone wrong. Moving on, we'll take a look at the zoo options. Okay, so this is things like if the zoo's open or closed, ticket prices and opening times. Ticket prices, very important to adjust that depending what's going on in the zoo. Set too high and the guests won't even come through the entrance. Have it too low and you'll start losing money. Good thing is it'll pop up as a notification if it's set too high or low with the guests complaining about it. Opening and closing times, you can change this so that you don't have to have it open so early and close so late. So if you don't like playing the game when it's dark, you can switch the closing time to be a lot earlier and you don't have to deal with that. That's everything to do with options. Let's go back, and now we're on to guests. This overlay screen gives a better idea of what guests are thinking, what they're feeling, and whether you're meeting their needs or not. All these options down the side, you're aiming for them not to be red like this. They're only red right now because we don't have anything in the zoo at all. Right, on to the graphs. As time goes on, this will show a visual representation of how we're doing on all those reputation points down the side. so it might give you a better idea when something's failed or when something suddenly becomes successful. Personally, not a screen I've ever paid a lot of attention to, but if you're a visual person, maybe this helps out more. Next up is the crime stats. I personally hate the crime in the game. I think it's a bit overzealous with way too much crime going on than what you get in a normal zoo. But it is part of the management of the game, and this screen will tell you what's getting vandalized, whether you've got pickpockets, and also how well your security staff are handling the not so nice guests in the zoo. Also a nice option down the side here where you can replace anything that's been vandalized or destroyed, so you're not having to scour the zoo in real time to find everything that's had a bit of damage. Right, next tab is finances. In here we've got an overview of costs, so this will be a balance sheet of everything that's coming in and out of the zoo. Then there's more graphs if you want a visual representation of how you're succeeding or failing. Next is marketing, and this is where you can set up marketing campaigns to promote the zoo, so get more people through the doors. Personally, I never do marketing campaigns unless it's part of a challenge that you can get a reward from, because if you need marketing, that means there's something fundamentally wrong with how you're running the zoo. If everything's going well, you won't have an issue with how many guests are coming through the doors. Next is the option for taking a loan, and again, like marketing, if you've got to the point where you're so short on cash that you need a loan, I find that when you're at that point, then you're going to fail even with the loan. If you do find yourself in that situation and you need to take a loan, I would say take out the smallest loan and figure out what's gone wrong. It may even be something simple like you need to increase the ticket fees, or maybe you've bit off more than you can chew with an expensive animal too early in the game. Just personal experience, every time I've had to take a loan out, the zoo has ultimately failed, albeit just a bit later down the line. So that's finances sorted. Let's take a look at the animal tab. I won't spend a lot of time on this one. Basically, the animal tab is where everything that you've put in to do with animals will be listed in here. It's a quick way to look up what and how many of each animal you've got across your habitats. Next is the staff overview, and what's important in here is the staff management screen. This will give an overview of staff happiness and the options for stuff like training and firing staff. Then next is a pretty important one, it's work zones. Grouping staff, habitats and facilities into work zones helps run your zoo more efficiently, but it is a fairly complex process, so I'm going to hold off explaining work zones further until we get to the point of creating our first work zone when we've got more things to put into one. Next is staff rooms, and this will show how many staff rooms you've got, how efficiently they're running, and you'll be able to apply perks and stuff to each of them. Finally, the last staff tab is staff uniforms, and this is pretty self-explanatory, this one. This is where you can customize the colour of the uniforms. Right, next tab is vet research. Research is pretty important in Planet Zoo. You start off with basic knowledge to run a zoo, and you will set up your vets to research things like animal enrichment and common diseases. The more research you complete, you'll improve the animal welfare and manage disease outbreaks more effectively. Instead of going into all of that now, I'll save that for the starting your zoo tutorial. In a similar fashion, the next tab is mechanic research. This is where you'll set the mechanic to research things like barrier types, better utilities, different build piece themes, and transport rides. Again, I'll show how this is done when we have the zoo established. Next tab is facilities. This is a breakdown of the type and number of facilities you have, so guest facilities like shops and toilets, staff buildings, and infrastructure like power and water utilities. Next is education. Like I mentioned before, education is an important factor in the game, and you'll have opportunity to add various elements of education like billboards, speakers, and set animal talks held by education personnel. This screen will help you keep tabs on what education zones you've established and how well they're contributing to your overall education score. Next is transport rides. Transport rides are a great addition for the zoo, but it's what I'd class as an advanced gameplay element, and they're not essential for zoo success, so I'll avoid complicating this quick start tutorial with the transport stuff and come back to this in a more advanced tutorial at some point. Last few tabs we've got left, we've got memorials. This is where you can add memorials of your favourite animals that have passed on, so keep tabs of them in this screen. Finally, we've got a tab for audio-visual equipment, so a list of all the speakers, billboards and cameras you've placed and how much they're costing you. So that in a nutshell is all the management tabs. However, under the same icon, we do have another important section in here, the animal zoopedia. Whenever you establish a new habitat, the zoopedia is your ultimate guide to the setup, parameters and requirements each species will need to fulfill the space, welfare and safety needs. We can use the aardvark here as an example for this. So, general information gives an overview of the species. It's interesting, but not going to help us with gameplay really. But the next screen, it tells us about the natural habitat. This will show the continent, so important for picking the right environment. Then it will show the biome, very important for selecting flora and fauna for the habitat. The animals and the guests, surprisingly, can get very fussy if you have the wrong planting for the different biomes in the habitats. Then we have minimum habitat requirements. This is very useful for knowing how big the habitat needs to be. You can add in here the number of animals that are going to be in the habitat, and that will tell you how big it needs to be, any climbing requirements, water requirements, including deep water requirements, and the type of barrier needed for the number of animals to be housed. So a lot of info there to keep them safe, happy, and stop them escaping. Next tab tells us the species data, and this is important for setting up the right social groups, so having the right balance of males and females, an idea of their mating habits, and a key point here is the relation with humans. All the animals in Planet Zoo are listed as shy, neutral or confident, and the shy and neutral ones need special accommodations like one-way glass to avoid the negative effects of stress. So it's really important to note this for when you start building habitats for various species. The category for guests entering habitats lets you know if you can create a walkthrough habitat for the animal, and that's where guests can enter the habitat where you can create a path inside. Just be warned, if it's a shy animal like the aardvark, I wouldn't advise creating a walkthrough habitat as that's going to be really difficult to manage the animal's stress levels. Rest of the information down here is to do with how long they live and how long it takes them to mature. Not critical to what we're showing here, let's move on. Research status just shows you what you've unlocked with the vet research, so as you unlock more research, more options for food and habitat enrichments will show up here. The final tab is interspecies enrichment. This will tell you here if the animal gets an enrichment bonus from being housed with another species. Some species can live together, and it's always worthwhile trying to make combined habitats when that's the case to get the bonus. Okay, that is everything useful I can think of in the zoopedia, so let us move on. We're making headway here, continue making our way through the bottom bar of tabs. This section's all to do with creating and building things. So habitat, this is all the pieces you'll need to place within a habitat to keep the animals happy. So that's food, water, climbing, sleeping. You can also filter it down to each element from this side too. Useful to filter it down to make sure you've got all elements covered. Next is nature, and this is all the flora and fauna. All species will have a preference for the level of nature in their habitat. Some like loads, some don't want any. It's all in here to appease the animal overlords. Next tab is facilities, and this houses everything that can be interacted with. Like with nature, this can be filtered down again, so we can go into guest facilities, and this will be everything that the guests can interact with. Utilities particularly, this is important to keep on top of for the power and the water stuff. Media and education, this is all the media stuff, so the speakers and the billboards and the educational objects and stuff like that. All the stuff the guests will interact with to heighten their education on the animals and conservation. Up here we've got the animal exhibits. Now these are the boxes that you will need to place before you can have exhibit animals in the zoo. Two types here, the large and the small box. Next is the staff facilities. There's a number of different facilities that staff will use, and this is for feeding the animals, looking after them, looking after the staff themselves. You'll need to place these around the zoo so the staff can do their job effectively. Then we've got utilities. Nope, we've already done utilities. It's onto bins and benches. That's exactly what you think it is, so move on. And the last one is transport rides. As I stated earlier, transport rides are a little advanced for beginner players, so we'll come back to that one in a different tutorial. Next tab is construction, and this is where all the build pieces live. So this is everything you'll use that's a stationary item. It can't be interacted with, but it just makes the zoo look prettier. This is the really creative side of Planet Zoo. Use anything in here, any way you want to create whatever you want. Part of the reason I've fallen in love with Planet Zoo, all these pieces to do anything I want with them. It's such a joyful freedom that you don't really get in many other games at all. Anyway, next tab is blueprints. In here you'll find the in-game blueprints that have been created by Frontier. This is also where you'll find your own blueprints that you create in the game, and also any that you download from the Frontier workshop. Let's carry on. So, staff. Now, this is where you select and place staff from. So every time you want to add a new staff member, you go to this tab and place them from this menu. Caretakers keep the zoo clean, and they can also move animals around the zoo. Keepers care for and clean up after the animals. Mechanics keep things running and research technologies for the zoo. Security guards maintain order, catching vandals and pickpockets. Vendors serve guests in the shops and restaurants. Vets take care of ill or injured animals, they conduct research, and they can also transport animals around the zoo. And educators give educational talks to guests. And that's the doing tabs explained. Just a couple left to run through now. So, pathing. Pathing can be a pain in Planet Zoo, there's no denying it. It can be fiddly and does take a bit of getting used to. As you can see here, it's like a sticky magnetic force. Take it near another path and it'll want to stick to it, like so. I'd say the best way to figure out paths is to practice. The more you use them, the more you get used to it. There's also a heap of pathing tutorials on YouTube, and the concept for paths in the PC and console versions is identical, so I'd say doing a deep dive on some of those videos will be a great help. So let's move on and take a look at terrain. The terrain editor lets you change terrain, so for sculpting you can raise the height of terrain, like this, and you can make it go back again. Let's just get that back down to where it was. In the same way, you can lower terrain as well, just like this. There is a whole host of other terrain editor stuff in here. I would say have a play around with it and see what looks good for you. Next option is terrain paint, and this creates different textures. You can use this to fill in and change the ground texture across your zoo, but it does also have a function beyond making things look pretty. Animals have terrain preferences and will require certain amounts of terrain within the habitats, so you will be using this when building up habitats. Next option is the water tool, and you use this to create bodies of water in the ground. To do this, you first need to create a hole in the ground so that the water can sit within it. That should do as an example. Then back to the water tool and fill it with water. Wait till it says it's valid, and there you go. Next is the terrain stamp, and this just takes out a block rather than the gentle incline that you got before with the other terrain tool. So useful when you've got a really big area that you want to make higher or lower. Obviously it does work the other way, so if we wanted to make a hole, we can make that happen as well. Good for when you need a nice straight line there. Next is barriers, and this is creating a barrier for making habitats, but better to explain that when we're at the point of making a habitat, so I'll save that for the starting your zoo tutorial. The bulldozer at the end is the demolition tool, and this allows you to mass delete things using a sphere of influence, so deleting everything or specific things from an area, which is easier than having to delete pieces one by one if you want to change something. So that is all of the build tools. The icon at the end takes you into the pause menu, and this provides the game options and settings. There is a couple things to note in here. General is just the volume and stuff. Then we've got the controller settings. Display setting is for the brightness. Interface for size, colours, hints and units used. Game settings is dealing with mostly navigation and the way the camera moves and stuff like that. So I check this and make sure it's set to your preferences. Last but not least, we've got Zoo Complexity Meter, and this will be the biggest difference between playing Planet Zoo on console versus the PC version. With the PC version, you're not limited in output and can pretty much expand your zoo as much as your setup can handle. As far as I understand, games released on console have to comply with strict quality standards, and the way that's managed for games like Planet Zoo, they set a limit on how much you can build and expand in order to maintain the quality output. So this meter here will determine how much you can put into any zoo. Once the meter is full, you can't add anything else, and the animals will also stop breeding. How far you can go before reaching that limit, I'm sure someone will be testing that out, but I imagine it to be quite a lot for most console players. But, and it's a big but, always bear that in mind that if you've got a huge expansive project, so like adding every single animal in the game into one zoo, you're probably not going to be able to achieve that on the console version. Moving on, I'll quickly explain the bottom bar icons as well. Over on the left is the zoo cash. We're in challenge mode, so for this we're starting off with 40,000 in the bank. Next is the conservation credits. Conservation credits is a separate currency in the game, and you earn these credits by conducting conservation actions, mostly through selling animals you breed for credits. You also earn credits in franchise mode by simply logging into your game, earning 100 credits every 24 hours by loading up franchise mode. Credits you earn can be spent in the trade centre to purchase new animals. The people icon will indicate the number of visitors currently in your zoo. This will show if the number of guests is increasing and also if the numbers are decreasing. It's a nice quick visual to assess the health of your zoo. If guest numbers are decreasing, that might mean interest in your animals might be waning and might indicate that you need another habitat or replacing an older established one with a different species. The star icon will show your current reputation, so all of the ratings for the 5 different categories. This also automatically brings up the guest needs, so will be a quick way to assess what guest satisfaction looks like without having to open the guest tab in the management tab. Over the other side, the arrows here are the quick undo and redo buttons. So if you build something by mistake, you can hit this button to undo, and the redo button for when you invariably delete something that you didn't mean to and want it back. Everyone uses that button eventually. Next is the pause game button. I would always recommend pausing the game when you're not looking at menus or building something so as not to miss something important happening. Next to this is the game speed. You can increase the game speed, so say you're actively waiting for something to happen, you can speed up the game and not have to sit around and wait for it in real time. Next icon is for camera effects. This incorporates how the camera works, the cinematic root editor, and colour effects you can apply in game. Best way to figure out the camera modes is to have a play around with this yourself. For visual effects, I really like the look of the warm filter, and to apply this most times I'm in a temperate or hot biome. There's also some wacky filters here, so you could make it go into night mode, for example. But for me personally, I do like playing on the warm setting. Makes the colours just pop a little more than they do on their own. Next to this is the weather system and the day and night cycle. In some of the game modes you can change the atmospheric conditions, so instead of the game randomly deciding the weather, you can turn it off entirely, which will set it to calm and ambient, or you can change this to be cloudy, raining or snowing. With the time, you can also set this to be a specific time of day. The day and night cycle in the game dictates where the sun is, and as you get closer to sunrise and sunset, the light will change, so if you'd rather stick with a set time, you can change that here. Next to this is the temperature setting. This will tell you the type of weather system in play, the current temperature, and it'll also tell you when a weather system is about to change. The animals are sensitive to the weather, so you'll notice some looking for shelter during the rain and snowstorms, and each animal has a temperature range that they're comfortable with, so if it's too hot or cold for them, you'll need to add heaters and coolers appropriately within their habitat. Then we've got the date and year. You'd think the weather system would align with the date, but that's rarely the case. It being January 21st right now and 26 degrees. Yeah, either the climate crisis has hit epic proportions or it's just Planet Zoo being Planet Zoo. Now, one of the tabs I realised I missed down here before is the animals tab. Once you've placed the trade centre, this is where you'll purchase habitat animals and exhibit animals. It's greyed out right now because we don't have the right facilities to get animals into the zoo, and I'll run through that in the next tutorial when we start placing habitats. There's also a link here to look at the animal management screens, and that's part of that main overview overlay that we went over before. The final icon at the top here that we haven't checked out, quite an important one this, it's the zoo heat maps. Clicking on this will bring up the heat map view, and there's a bunch of options in here that will highlight conditions in the zoo to help you identify and manage issues. This is something that I kind of ignored when I first started playing Planet Zoo, and I wish I got on board with the heat maps a lot earlier than I did. Since we don't have anything placed in the zoo yet, it's difficult to demonstrate how this works, but as you can see, there's a bunch of different options, and it's really useful to understand how these work and how to navigate them. So I'll be running through these in the next tutorial, which will be focused on the essentials you need to learn to create and manage a successful zoo from the outset. That's everything covered with the user interface, so join me in the starter zoo to learn how to put all of this into practice.